The autumn leaves danced a melancholic waltz across the Upper East Side sidewalks, each one carrying the whisper of summer's gone and the premonition of winter's to come. For Jane, every fallen leaf was a silent reminder of the distance between her world and the one she cleaned. Her days were a tapestry of gleam and shadow. The golden rays of the morning sun filtered through the massive windows of a Carrington mansion, revealing the dust that she, with tired hands, would make disappear. She moved like a ghost, her footsteps soft over Persian rugs, worth more than her entire life. The mansion, a monument of stone and glass, seemed to breathe a cold, indifferent grandeur. Its corridors echoed silent stories of generations of wealth, of opulent parties and closely guarded secrets. For Jane, however, it was just a job that, however exhausting, paid the bills and kept the dream of her small flower shop alive. A fragile, yet stubborn dream, which she carried in her pocket like a seed of hope. Her life was a study in contrasts. While the Carringtons lived in a world of crystal and porcelain, Jane navigated a labyrinth of duty and sacrifice. She lived in a small Brooklyn apartment, where the walls were thin and the dreams were big. At night, after long hours at the mansion, she sketched bouquets in a worn notebook, imagining the textures of petals, the scent of flowers, the joy they would bring. A soul of pure resilience, painted with the melancholy of a life unlived. It was a gray morning when fate wove its first thread. Jane was cleaning the mansion's vast library, a sanctuary of knowledge and history. Hardcover books, many untouched for decades, lined the shelves from floor to ceiling. The air there was thick with the scent of aged paper and furniture wax, an aroma that, strangely, comforted her. She was wiping a damp cloth over the surface of an antique mahogany desk when her hand brushed against something. A secret compartment, hidden beneath an ornate carving. Curiosity, a rare luxury in her life, overcame her. She opened it, and there, nestled like a forgotten secret, lay a small leather-bound journal and a fountain pen. Her heart leaped. The journal was empty, immaculate, a silent invitation. An inner voice, whispering and forbidden, begged her to write. It wasn't stealing, she rationalized. It was a pause, a release. She picked up the pen, its weight surprising in her hand. The words flowed, a river of repressed thoughts and feelings she had never dared to verbalize. She wrote about the mansion, about the distance, about her dreams and the loneliness that often accompanied her. She signed simply J and hid the journal back. The act was a whisper of rebellion, a nod to herself. A few days later, returning to the library, an invisible force pulled her back to the desk. The journal. She opened it with a mixture of fear and anticipation. And there, in elegant, unfamiliar handwriting, was a reply. A single line written below hers. "Who is J? Your words found an echo." A shiver ran down her spine. Someone had read. Someone had replied. The journal, which she thought was her secret refuge, was now a bridge. An invisible bridge to an unknown. The mansion, once a place of arduous work, now carried a new kind of tension, a silent expectation. She found herself looking for him, the man who had replied. He was Nick Carrington, the billionaire, the heir, a man of mystery and shadows, whose presence was felt before it was even seen. He was the tallest tower of that stone empire, a man of sculpted features and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of an entire world. She saw him rarely, in fleeting glimpses down the hallways, always hurried, always distant. There was something about him, though, that drew her in. An aura of melancholy, perhaps. A loneliness she, in some way, recognized. A man of steel and secrets. That day, as Jane finished polishing an antique mirror in the entryway, he appeared. He paused for a moment, his blue-gray eyes meeting hers in the reflection. There were no words, just a gaze. But in that gaze, Jane felt something more than the acknowledgement between maid and employer. There was an undercurrent, a silent spark that lit the air between them. He was the man who had replied. She knew, and he, perhaps, knew that she was Jay. By day, distance. By night, truth. The world seemed to spin a little slower in that moment, the sound of autumn outside silenced by the accelerated beat of her own heart. He continued on his way, an imposing figure disappearing down the corridors. Jane remained there, the image of his eyes still etched in her mind. The journal, the words, the gaze, everything intertwined into a tight knot of mystery and longing. She felt that something irreversible had begun, a silent game played in the shadows of that immense mansion. What would he write next? And what would she dare to reveal? The hook was cast, and she was caught. The journal became their silent confidant, a bridge built of ink and unspoken desires. Each morning, Jane approached the mahogany desk with a mixture of trepidation and fervent hope. Would there be new words? Would he have responded? And each time, her heart would either soar or ache with anticipation. His entries were initially guarded, questions rather than statements, probing gently into the soul laid bare by her own words. He wrote of the pressure of his world, the weight of his name, the hollow echo of his vast estate. His words were like a soft touch in a lonely world. Jane, in turn, found a freedom she never knew existed within those pages. She wrote of her dreams for the flower shop, the scent of fresh earth, the vibrant colors she yearned to arrange. She confessed her fears, her vulnerability, the quiet strength that had sustained her through a life of hardship. She never mentioned her name, nor did he his in the journal itself. But the connection transcended names, transcended the labels of employer and employee. It was soul to soul, heart to heart, hidden within the walls of a forbidden fortress. By day, distance. By night, truth. Their exchanges grew more frequent, more intimate. They discussed literature, art, the meaning of happiness, and the burden of expectation. Sometimes, Jane would find a small, pressed flower tucked between the pages, a silent, delicate gift. Other times, he would leave a philosophical quote, a mirror to a thought she had expressed. These small gestures were monumental, tiny sparks igniting a fire that threatened to consume them both. The mansion, once a symbol of her servitude, transformed into a secret garden of their burgeoning affection. Every polished surface, every hushed corridor seemed to hum with their unspoken connection. Jane started to observe Nick more closely during her shifts. She saw the lines of weariness etched around his striking blue eyes, the way his jaw would subtly clench when he was lost in thought, the rare, almost imperceptible smiles that touched his lips when he believed no one was watching. He carried the world on his shoulders, yet found solace in her words. One afternoon, she was dusting in the study when she overheard a phone call from Nick. His voice, usually so controlled, was laced with frustration, a raw edge she hadn't heard before. He spoke of business deals, of betrayals, of the relentless pursuit of more. He sounded trapped, a gilded bird in a cage of his own making. Jane felt a pang of empathy, so sharp it almost brought her to her knees. This man, with all his wealth and power, was as much a prisoner as she felt in her own way. Their worlds were different, yet their burdens resonated. She longed to offer comfort, to reach out across the chasm of their social divide. But the rules of their existence were rigid, unspoken yet unbreakable. He was the master, she the maid. A love between them was not just improbable, it was scandalous, a whispered secret that could shatter both their lives. One evening, after she had left her entry in the journal, she found herself lingering by the desk, a strange pull holding her there. Suddenly, the library door opened, and Nick stood there, silhouetted against the dim light of the hall. He wasn't wearing his usual impeccable suit, but a loosened tie and an unbuttoned collar. His hair was slightly disheveled, and his eyes, usually guarded, held a vulnerability that stunned her. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and the air crackled with an electricity that was both exhilarating and terrifying. A silent confession hung heavy in the air. Neither spoke. There was no need. The journal, hidden in its compartment, pulsed with their shared secrets, their forbidden desires. He took a hesitant step into the room, and Jane felt her breath catch in her throat. She should leave. She knew she should leave, but her feet were rooted to the spot, drawn by an irresistible force. His gaze softened, a flicker of something raw and desperate passing through his eyes. It was a look of recognition, of shared longing, a plea. Just then, a sharp, authoritative voice cut through the silence. "Nick! Are you in here? We need to discuss the quarterly reports." It was Evelyn, Nick's formidable and impeccably dressed fiancée, her presence a stark, cold contrast to the warmth that had just filled the library. She stood at the doorway, her eyes, sharp and calculating, sweeping over Jane before settling on Nick. Her smile was a practiced mask, but there was an underlying tension, a proprietorial air that made Jane's heart sink. Evelyn's arm, adorned with a dazzling diamond bracelet, subtly linked through Nick's as she approached him. She offered Jane a brief, dismissive nod, a gesture that spoke volumes about their respective stations. The world crashed back into place, cold and unforgiving. Jane felt herself shrink, the intimate connection with Nick instantly severed by the harsh reality of his impending marriage. Evelyn's presence was a stark, glittering wall between them, a reminder of the chasm they could never truly bridge. As Evelyn led Nick away, discussing dates for their wedding, Jane could feel Nick's eyes on her for one last, agonizing moment, a flicker of apology, of regret, of something profound and aching. But he said nothing. He couldn't. She stood alone in the library, the scent of old books and unspoken desires heavy in the air. The small, hidden journal now felt like a dangerous artifact, a testament to a love that was not just forbidden, but seemingly impossible. The dream of her flower shop suddenly seemed very far away, overshadowed by the crushing weight of their intertwined, yet separate realities. The revelation of his fiancée, her tangible presence, was not just an obstacle, it was a precipice. How could she, a humble maid, ever compete with the dazzling reality of his intended? The secret letters, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap, tightening around her heart. The revelation of Evelyn's presence, her possessive hand on Nick's arm, cast a long, cold shadow over the quiet intimacy of the journal entries. Jane's heart, once buoyant with the shared whispers of their souls, now carried a heavy ache. Each word penned in the secret compartment felt tainted, a betrayal not only to Evelyn, but to her own fragile sense of self. How could she continue to write, to pour out her heart, when the man on the other end was bound to another? The gilded cage had a new, sharper set of bars. The journal exchanges grew strained. Jane's entries became more hesitant, tinged with a sorrow she couldn't quite articulate, even on paper. Nick, sensing her withdrawal, responded with questions laden with unspoken concern, a desperate plea for her to continue. He tried to bridge the growing chasm with philosophical musings, with shared observations about the mundane beauty of the world, but the underlying tension of Evelyn's imminent presence was a constant, suffocating hum. By day, distance. By night, truth. But what if the truth was too painful? Their fleeting glances in the mansion's corridors, once charged with a secret understanding, now held a different kind of intensity. Jane saw regret in his eyes, a silent apology, perhaps. But she also saw the weight of his world, the unyielding expectations that pressed down on him, shaping his every move. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that their connection, however profound, was doomed to remain hidden, a beautiful, impossible dream. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Jane tidied Nick's study, she noticed an old, forgotten photo album tucked beneath a stack of financial reports. Curiosity, a dangerous companion, urged her to open it. Inside, she found candid snapshots of a younger Nick, his face alight with a genuine joy she rarely witnessed. And beside him, in many of the photos, was Evelyn. Not the poised, formidable woman she knew, but a vibrant, laughing girl. They looked genuinely happy, a shared history etched in their smiles. A deeper ache settled in Jane's chest. Their love, she realized, was not a recent arrangement, but a long-standing bond, a foundation built over years. The past was a formidable opponent. A sudden, sharp movement startled her. The study door opened, and Evelyn stood there, her eyes narrowed, fixed not on Jane, but on the open album in her hands. A glacial silence descended, thick and suffocating. Evelyn's gaze, usually dismissive, was now piercing, suspicious. Her lips curled into a thin, knowing smile that sent a shiver down Jane's spine. Prying eyes, Jane. Her voice was soft, dangerously so. Some things are best left untouched. Jane stammered, attempting an explanation, but the words caught in her throat. Evelyn didn't wait for a response. Her eyes swept over the desk, landing on the ornate carving, the slight indentation that marked the secret compartment. Jane's blood ran cold. Had Evelyn seen her place the journal back? Had she suspected? Evelyn's smile widened, devoid of warmth. My fiancé has always been rather sentimental. He often keeps little notes, little mementos. Her fingers, tipped with perfectly manicured nails, traced the edge of the hidden compartment. A silly habit, really. A chilling realization dawned on Jane. Evelyn didn't know about the journal, not truly. But she suspected. She had seen enough to fuel her suspicions, to weaponize them. By day, distance. By night, truth, now twisted into a weapon. The atmosphere in the mansion shifted. Evelyn's visits became more frequent, her presence more pervasive. She would often linger in the library, her eyes subtly observing Jane, a silent warning in her gaze. The journal, once a source of solace, now felt like a ticking time bomb. Jane stopped writing. The words simply wouldn't come. The joy, the freedom, had evaporated, replaced by a gnawing fear. One evening, a few weeks later, Jane was completing her tasks in the library. Nick was away on a business trip, and the mansion felt emptier, colder. As she finished, she noticed something glinting on the floor near the desk. It was a small, delicate silver locket. It looked expensive, clearly belonging to Evelyn. As Jane bent to pick it up, she heard hushed voices from the hallway. I saw her, Nick, lingering by your desk, always in the library, always with that look in her eyes. It was Evelyn's voice, laced with venom. Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't see the way she looks at you? The way you tolerate her presence? Then Nick's voice, low and strained. Evelyn, you're imagining things. Jane is just the staff. Oh, really? Evelyn scoffed. Then why did I find this? Jane froze, the locket clutched in her hand. She couldn't see what Evelyn was holding, but her imagination, fueled by dread, painted a vivid picture. Had Evelyn found the journal? Had she read their words? The silent, emotional exchanges that had become the very fabric of Jane's secret world. A wave of nausea washed over her. She knew, instinctively, that this was the end. The fragile bridge they had built was collapsing. Then, a louder, angrier tone from Evelyn. And this, Nick? What exactly is this? A love letter from your cleaning lady. Jane's breath hitched. Her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The sound of a tearing paper, a desperate, wrenching sound, echoed through the quiet halls. She heard Nick's sharp intake of breath, a choked protest. The locket slipped from Jane's numb fingers, clattering softly on the polished floor. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the elegant bookshelves, the very place where their connection had bloomed. She couldn't stay, couldn't bear to witness the destruction of their beautiful, forbidden secret. She fled, her footsteps echoing her broken heart, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a love that was never meant to be. The grand mansion, once a vessel for their shared dreams, now felt like a mausoleum for her crushed spirit. The dream of her flower shop, once a beacon of hope, now seemed impossibly distant, obscured by a shroud of pain and despair. The truth, finally brought to light, was a merciless blade. Jane's escape from the mansion that night was a blur of raw emotion. The cool night air offered no solace, only a biting reminder of the cold, harsh reality that had just shattered her world. The sound of Evelyn's furious words, Nick's strained protest, and the horrifying tear of paper replayed in her mind like a macabre symphony. Her entries, his responses, their shared vulnerability, all laid bare, exposed, and brutally destroyed. She walked for hours, aimless, until the exhaustion in her body matched the desolation in her soul. Her sanctuary had become her undoing. Days turned into a week, each one a relentless battle against a crushing emptiness. Jane couldn't bring herself to return to the mansion. The thought of facing Nick, of enduring Evelyn's triumphant gaze, was unbearable. She sent a brief, apologetic message to the cleaning agency, citing personal reasons, knowing it would likely cost her the job, her only lifeline to her dreams. But the pain was too profound, the humiliation too deep, to care. The vibrant colors of her imagined flower shop faded into a monochrome landscape of despair. By day, distance. By night, truth, now a gaping wound. Meanwhile, Within the gilded walls of the Carrington mansion, a storm raged. Nick, confronted with Evelyn's fury and the torn pages of the journal, felt a cold dread settle in his chest. He had seen the raw despair in Jane's eyes just before she fled, a look that mirrored the anguish in his own heart. Evelyn's words were a torrent of accusations, her betrayal palpable. She had invaded his private world, destroyed something precious, something he hadn't even fully admitted to himself. "How could you, Evelyn?" His voice was a low growl, devoid of the usual aristocratic calm. "To go through my things, to destroy something so personal." "Personal!" she scoffed, holding up the shredded remnants of a page. "This is a love letter, Nick. From your maid. How dare she? How dare you? We're getting married in a month." The argument escalated, tearing through the pristine quiet of the mansion. Nick felt a profound sense of claustrophobia. His life, meticulously planned and curated, felt like a gilded prison. He had always accepted his destiny, his duty to the Carrington name, to Evelyn, a woman he had known since childhood, a partnership forged in shared social standing and corporate ambition. But Jane was different. Her words, her spirit, had cracked open something within him he thought long dead. She had seen him, truly seen him, beyond the facade. He remembered her quiet strength, the way her eyes held a universe of unspoken dreams, the gentle curve of her smile when she thought no one was looking. He remembered the feeling of exhilaration when he found her words in the journal, a kindred spirit in a world that often felt utterly alien. He had tried to ignore it, to compartmentalize it, to believe it was just a fleeting fantasy. But Evelyn's destructive act had ripped away the veil of denial. He loved Jane. A dangerous, forbidden, impossible love. The fight with Evelyn reached a crescendo. He saw her not as his future wife, but as a symbol of the suffocating expectations that had always defined his existence. "I can't do this, Evelyn," he said, his voice quiet but firm, cutting through her tirade. "I can't marry you." Her face, contorted with rage, paled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he continued, taking a deep, shuddering breath, "that I can't live a lie anymore. I can't marry you, not when my heart belongs to someone else." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Evelyn's gasping breath. Her meticulously constructed world, like Jane's, was crumbling. By day, distance. By night, truth. And the truth demanded freedom. Nick left the mansion that night, not for a business trip, but in search of Jane. He knew where she lived, had discreetly learned it during their journal exchanges. He found her apartment building, a stark contrast to his own opulent residence, and stood there hesitant, unsure if she would even open the door. He clutched a small, leather-bound book in his hand, his own journal, filled with his own confessions, his own desperate longing for her. He knocked, a soft, almost imperceptible sound against the cheap wood. Silence. He knocked again, a little louder this time. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open just a sliver. Jane stood there, her eyes red-rimmed, her face pale, a ghost of her former self. Her gaze was wary, filled with a raw pain that pierced his heart. "Jane," he breathed, his voice rough with emotion. I had to find you." She stared at him, a myriad of emotions swirling in her eyes. Hurt, anger, confusion, and beneath it all, a flicker of something he desperately yearned to rekindle. "Why, Nick?" Her voice was a fragile whisper. "To witness the wreckage." He shook his head, pushing his journal forward. "No. To tell you, to show you." His eyes pleaded with her. "I ended things with Evelyn. I couldn't marry her. Not after everything." He gestured vaguely to the journal in his hand. "Not after this." Her eyes widened, a fragile spark of hope igniting amidst the ashes of her despair. She looked from his face to the journal, then back again. The weight of his words hung in the air, immense and life-altering. He, the untouchable billionaire, had chosen her. He had chosen truth over duty, heart over empire. It was a choice that redefined everything. A single tear traced a path down Jane's cheek, but this time it was not solely of pain. It was a tear of profound shock, of unexpected hope, of a love that, against all odds, might just have a chance to breathe. The distance between them, once an insurmountable chasm, now seemed to narrow, infinitesimally, miraculously. The mansion, with all its secrets and shadows, was no longer a barrier, but a testament to the power of a love that dared to challenge its very foundations. This was not the end, it was a beginning. The small apartment door, once a symbol of Jane's humble existence, now felt like a threshold to an unknown future. Nick stood there, his own journal outstretched, a silent offering of his truth. The air crackled with the weight of unspoken words, of sacrifices made, and of a love that had defied every expectation. Jane, still reeling from his confession, slowly reached out and took his journal. Her fingers brushed against his, and a jolt, familiar yet profoundly new, passed between them. It was a silent acknowledgment, a promise whispered without sound. His sacrifice was a testament written in the pages of his heart. She opened his journal, her gaze scanning the elegant script. Page after page, she read his deepest thoughts, his fears, his dreams, mirroring her own. He had documented his internal struggle, the suffocating weight of his arranged life, and the startling, undeniable pull he felt towards her, the quiet woman who cleaned his house. He wrote of feeling seen, truly seen, for the first time in his life, through her words, her vulnerability. He confessed his growing love, a love that had blossomed in the shadows, nourished by ink and longing. Tears, hot and undeniable, streamed down Jane's face. These were not tears of sorrow, but of release, of overwhelming emotion. He had chosen her. He had chosen them. By day, distance. By night, truth, now shining brighter than any star. The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind of quiet, tentative steps towards a future neither had dared to imagine. Nick's decision to break off his engagement sent shockwaves through the elite circles of New York. The gossip columns buzzed with speculation, the Carrington name momentarily tarnished by scandal. But Nick, for the first time in his life, felt a profound sense of liberation. The weight of expectation, once crushing, had lifted. He faced the scrutiny with a quiet dignity, his resolve unwavering. He was finally free to choose, to live, to love. Jane, too, found a new strength. The fear that had once defined her had receded, replaced by a quiet confidence. She opened her small flower shop, a dream nurtured for so long, now blossoming into reality. Nick, shedding the corporate armor he had worn for so long, became her most devoted supporter, not just financially, but emotionally. He would visit the shop, not as a powerful patron, but as a man deeply in love, his eyes alight with adoration as he watched her arrange blooms, her hands creating beauty. Their love story was not a fairy tale of instant transformation, but a testament to profound choices. They found solace in simple moments, shared meals in her cozy apartment, quiet walks through Central Park, long evenings spent discussing books, dreams, and the intricacies of their intertwined souls. They rebuilt trust, brick by painstaking brick, talking through the lingering shadows of their past, the class divide that still existed, though now bridged by mutual respect and undeniable love. He had traded a kingdom for a single, precious bloom. One crisp spring afternoon, as Jane arranged a vibrant bouquet of peonies in her shop, Nick arrived, a small, worn leather journal in his hand, their original journal, retrieved from the mansion, meticulously repaired and rebound. He handed it to her, his gaze tender. "It's a reminder," he said, his voice soft, "of where we started, of the courage it took to find each other." Jane took the journal, her fingers tracing the familiar indentations where their secrets had been kept. "And a promise," she whispered, "of where we're going." They stood there, surrounded by the fragrant beauty of her shop, two souls from vastly different worlds, united by the power of words, by a love that had bloomed in the most unexpected of places. The mansion, with its grandiosity and its hidden compartments, now stood not as a symbol of their forbidden love, but as a silent witness to its triumph. By day, shared dreams. By night, truth, unbound and everlasting. Love, in its purest form, often finds its roots in the most unlikely of soils. It dares to challenge the walls we build, the expectations we inherit, the duties we embrace. It whispers in the quiet spaces, in the unseen corners of our lives, waiting for a courageous heart to listen. Sometimes, the most profound connections are forged in secrecy, tested by judgment, and ultimately celebrated in the unwavering choice of two souls to see beyond the superficial, to choose truth over convenience, and heart over empire. For in the echoes of a hidden letter, a forbidden love can find its voice not just within the pages of a journal, but in the boundless story of a life truly lived. And that in itself is the greatest treasure one can ever find.